Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're diving into something absolutely insane. What if Naruto was a Lunarian from One Piece? For those who don't know, Lunarians are literally called gods. They can survive anywhere, have unbreakable bodies, fly with massive wings, and control divine fire that melts everything. King the Wildfire tanked mountain-busting attacks like nothing. So we thought, what if we gave this broken divine heritage to the most determined character in anime? Naruto with starfire wings, flames hotter than the sun, and godlike durability. This epic story follows his journey from discovering his extinct bloodline to choosing between godhood and humanity in a world-shaking finale. Smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. Let's dive into this masterpiece. Morning sunlight spilled over the tiled roofs of Konoha, turning every window pane into a small, dazzling sun. In the academy yard, the air already shimmered with humidity and adolescent impatience. Shouts, wooden kunai clacking, the squeak of sandals over sand-packed earth. Naruto Uzumaki was running late again. He vaulted the iron gate, landed in a skid, and grinned at the circle of classmates who had, for once, noticed him before he could announce his own arrival. "Look, the dead last finally showed," called Mizuki's favorite chorus of older students. They fanned out, corralling him away from Iruka-sensei's view. Naruto's trademark retort, something about becoming Hokage and making them scrub murals of his face off every wall in the village, died on his tongue when he caught their expressions. Not scornful but curious, predatory, the tallest boy jabbed a finger at Naruto's shirt collar. "You hiding something, freak?" Naruto blinked. "Just my amazing pecs." Laughter, then a shove. He hit the fence, breath whooshing out. Heat flushed under his skin, familiar and maddening, but different today, deeper, like coals stirred at the bottom of a hearth. "Come on, make the funny red chakra eyes again," someone sneered. "Or is that all rumors?" Red chakra, the nine tails. Naruto shook his head, jokes about the monster sealed inside him hurt, but they were predictable. The heat pulsing in his chest was not. Another shove, the iron taste of anger spread across his palate. Something answered inside him, ancient and impatient. "Stop." He clenched his fists, fingernails biting skin. The tall boy smirked, grabbed the front of Naruto's jacket, white fire blossomed. It wasn't the violent vermilion aura villagers whispered about. This flame was silent, immaculate, drifting off Naruto's skin like feathers of light. The bully shrieked and stumbling backward, slapping at his singed sleeves. The circle scattered, terror trumping bravado. Naruto stared wide-eyed as pale fire rippled from his forearms in slow, regal waves. It didn't burn, it caressed, weightless as moonlight, yet the sand beneath his sandals hissed and fused into glassy streaks. "Everyone back?" Iruka's voice cracked like a whip. He intercepted Naruto, kunai out, unsure whether to fight the flame or shield the boy. The decision never came. An instant later, Anbu masked in weasel porcelain flashed between them, and the third Hokage himself strode onto the field, robes flaring in the unnatural heat. Hiruzen Sarutobai's gaze softened when it landed on Naruto, but grief flickered their two old embers fanned by memory. He raised a single-hand seal, a transparent sphere of chakra folded around the yard, dampening the flame's breath. "Naruto," he said, voice low. "Listen to me, breathe in and let go." Naruto obeyed, more out of shock than discipline. One deep inhale, one trembling exhale, and the ivory blaze winked out, leaving only curls of fragrant smoke and the faint silhouette of wings, momentarily etched in light behind his shoulders. Dark spots danced in his vision. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness claimed him was the Hokage's weathered face, thoughtful and unbearably sad. Memory, 13 years earlier night, blanketed Konoha when Hiruzen answered the urgent knock at his office door. Two Anbu entered, carrying a bundle swaddled in heat-scarred cloth. Flames still licked the fabric, yet the infant inside cooed, unharmed. "Found at the village perimeter," the squad leader reported. "A crater of melted stone, no trace of adult chakra, and this." He drew back the blanket, tiny fists waved. Soft tufts of blonde hair were streaked with white like frost. The baby's bronze skin shimmered faintly as though embers glowed beneath. Hiruzen's breath caught. He had seen such markings once, a lifetime ago, on warriors who called themselves Lunarians, beings from a forgotten sky tribe said to survive any environment, their bodies crowned in holy fire. But the Lunarians were gone, hunted to extinction by governments that feared indestructible gods. Why is one here, alone cradling the full moon in his smile? The question would haunt Hiruzen through the next day's catastrophe, when the Nine Tails attacked and Minato Namikaze fell, buying the village one final dawn. In the chaos, the Lunarian child and the Jinchuriki orphan became the same person. A secret fashioned out of survival. Never let them brand this boy a god nor a demon, Hiruzen had vowed that night. Let him grow first as a child. Hospital wing, present-day Naruto woke in sterile lamplight, throat raw with questions. Electrodes clung to his chest, the monitor beeped steady. Beside the bed sat the third Hokage, pipe unlit, eyes more wrinkled than Naruto remembered. "Old man," his voice croaked. "Easy," Hiruzen offered water. "How do you feel?" "Like I swallowed the sun." Naruto managed a grin, then faltered. Memories flooded back, the bully's sleeve igniting, Uruka's panic, white flame spilling from his own pores. "What was that?" Silence stretched, thick as syrup. Hiruzen closed his eyes a moment, gathering resolve. "There are truths I have kept from you," he began. "Truths about the night you were born. You already know of the Nine Tails, but there is another legacy in your blood, one older than any tailed beast." He folded his hands. "Have you ever heard tales of the people who lived above the clouds, whose bodies burned with celestial fire?" Naruto's brows knit. "Like angels, some called them that." A sad smile. "Their proper name was Lunarian." Hiruzen recounted fragments of legend, ebony-winged guardians, fire that could scorch the sea, skin resilient as diamond and ashen as star-specked night. He spoke of a genocide fueled by fear, how empires conspired to erase gods from the earth, and how, in the ruins of some unknown battleground, Anbu had found a single infant still cradled in moon-white flame. The story left Naruto shivering beneath thin blankets. "So, I'm not a monster," he whispered. "I'm a child." Hiruzen's voice turned firm. "A child of this village first and always. Your heritage does not decide your heart. Your choices do." Naruto's gaze dropped to his hands, half expecting white fire to blossom again. "Can anyone teach me to control it?" "I will find a way," the Hokage promised, though worry etched deeper into his face. If the world learns a Lunarian lives, for now he slipped a suppression seal, thin as rice paper, onto Naruto's sternum. It glowed, then dimmed, dampening the simmer of power beneath his skin. "Rest," Hiruzen said, rising. "Tomorrow we speak of training and of trust. For tonight, dream only of the things you wish to protect." Naruto watched the old man leave, the door hissing shut behind him. Moonlight fell across the floor, silver and silent. He imagined stepping into it, wings unfurled, flying so high no one could brand him demon or deity, only Naruto. He touched the seal, warmth pulsing beneath his fingertips like a heartbeat made of stars. "I'll master this," he vowed to the empty room. "Then I'll show everyone my flame's not here to hurt them, it's here to light the way." Outside, the first cicada of summer cried into the night, and somewhere in the depths of the village a forgotten ember stirred, eager for dawn. 3 days after the incident at the academy, Naruto found himself in a place he'd never been allowed to enter, the deepest archives beneath the Hokage Tower. Scrolls stretched from floor to ceiling, their age-yellowed paper crackling with secrets older than the village itself. "Careful with that one," Hiruzen warned as Naruto reached for a particularly ornate scroll case. "Some knowledge carries its own weight." The suppression seal itched against Naruto's chest, a constant reminder of the power coiled beneath his skin like a sleeping dragon. He'd spent the last 3 days dodging whispers in the streets, pretending not to notice how shopkeepers' hands trembled when they counted his change. Word had spread, despite Anbu's best efforts. The demon boy can make white fire now. Hiruzen selected a scroll bound in midnight blue silk and unrolled it across a reading table. Ancient ink depicted winged figures wreathed in flame, soaring above mountain peaks that scraped the belly of heaven itself. The Lunarians called themselves Tsuki no Senshi, warriors of the moon, the Hokage began, his voice taking on the cadence of a man reciting scripture. They were said to be descendants of beings who lived on the moon itself, blessed with bodies that could survive in any environment. Crushing ocean depths, the vacuum of space, the heart of a volcano, nothing could harm them when their flames burned true. Naruto traced a finger along the illustrations, mesmerized. The painted Lunarians bore his coloring, bronze skin, silver-touched hair, but their expressions held a serenity he'd never felt. No loneliness haunted their eyes. They were really called gods by some. Hiruzen unrolled another scroll, revealing detailed anatomical drawings. Their flames served as both shield and sword. When threatened, it would ignite automatically, creating an impenetrable barrier. But the power came with a price. The stronger the flame, the more of their life force it consumed. The words sent a chill down Naruto's spine. "So if I use too much, the flame itself won't kill you," Hiruzen said carefully, "but it will demand payment. Exhaustion, vulnerability, rapid aging if pushed to extremes. Your Uzumaki heritage may protect you somewhat. That clan was known for their massive life force, but even they had limits." Naruto absorbed this in silence, studying diagrams that showed how Lunarian flames could enhance physical abilities. Their flight wasn't achieved through chakra manipulation like the Tsuchikige's techniques, but through an innate connection to something the scrolls called moon breath, a cosmic energy that allowed them to reject gravity itself. "Can you teach me to fly?" Hiruzen's weathered hands stilled on the scroll. "That knowledge died with the last Lunarian master I knew. We'll have to rediscover it together." The old man's expression grew distant, memories flickering behind his eyes like candle flame. "I met them once, you know, a small group of survivors passing through Fire Country when I was younger. They moved like dancers, fought like gods, and spoke of duty with the weight of mountains in their voices. What happened to them? What happened to all their kind?" Hiruzen's voice turned bitter. "The world government's purge reached even here. Not directly, they knew better than to march armies into the land of fire, but they had other methods. Poison in the water, diseases crafted to target Lunarian blood. Bounties so vast that even honorable men became hunters." Naruto's fists clenched. The familiar heat stirred in his chest, straining against the suppression seal. "Why? If they were protectors." "Because gods do not serve governments," Hiruzen said simply. "And men who cannot be controlled are always deemed threats, no matter their intentions." The weight of legacy settled on Naruto's shoulders like a mantle of lead. Not just the last of his kind, but the inheritor of a genocide. He thought of the villagers' fearful faces, how they shrank from him even before knowing about the Lunarian blood. Would they ever see him as anything other than a walking catastrophe? Hiruzen seemed to read his thoughts. "The path of power is always lonely, Naruto, but it need not be purposeless. Your flames, both the white fire and the Nine-Tails chakra, they respond to your emotions, don't they?" Naruto nodded reluctantly. "Then let me tell you something the Lunarians understood that most shinobi never learn." The Hokage leaned forward, eyes bright with conviction. "Power without compassion is mere destruction, but compassion backed by unbreakable strength, that can reshape the world." He gestured to the painted figures on the scrolls. "Look at their faces again." "Really look," Naruto obeyed, studying the serene expressions of the ancient warriors. Slowly, he began to understand what he was seeing. It wasn't emptiness or cold divinity, it was peace. The peace of someone who had accepted their burden and chosen to carry it with grace. "They weren't gods because they were powerful," Naruto whispered. "They were gods because they chose to protect people anyway." "Exactly." Hiruzen smiled, the first genuinely warm expression Naruto had seen from him since the incident. "Your flames are not a curse to be hidden or a weapon to be feared. They are a responsibility to be honored." The suppression seal pulsed against Naruto's chest, but for the first time it felt less like a chain and more like a training weight, something to be endured until he was strong enough to bear the full burden of his heritage. "When do we start training?" "Tomorrow, before dawn." Hiruzen began rolling up the scrolls with practiced care. "We'll begin in training ground 44, the Forest of Death. If you're going to learn to control divine fire, you'll need space where accidents won't level buildings." Naruto's grin could have powered the village's electrical grid. Finally. "No more holding back." "Oh, you'll be holding back plenty," Hiruzen said dryly. "The difference is that now you'll be doing it by choice rather than ignorance. Control, Naruto, that's what separates a protector from a destroyer." As they climbed the stairs back to the surface, Naruto's mind raced with possibilities. Flight, enhanced strength, flames that could burn through any defense. He was going to be the strongest ninja who ever lived. He'd show Sasuke and Sakura and everyone else that he wasn't just the dead last academy student anymore. But beneath the excitement, a deeper current ran through his thoughts. The painted Lunarians haunted him, not their power but their isolation. Every scroll had shown them alone or in small groups, never integrated into larger communities. "I won't be like that," he promised silently. "I'll be a god who belongs somewhere." The afternoon sun painted Konoha's rooftops gold as they emerged from the archives. Somewhere in the distance, Naruto could hear the sounds of academy students practicing, the same yard where his flames had first awakened. Soon, he'd return there not as a failure hiding his true nature, but as someone who had learned to carry his power with purpose. "Old man," he said as they paused at the tower's entrance. "Yes. Thank you for keeping the secret all these years, for protecting me from whatever would have happened if they'd known." Hiruzen's hand settled on Naruto's shoulder, warm and steady. "It was never a burden, my boy. Watching you grow, seeing you choose kindness despite everything you've endured, it's been the greatest privilege of my life." The suppression seal hummed softly, a reminder of the power waiting to be unleashed. But for the first time since the flames had awakened, Naruto felt ready to face whatever came next. He was Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki, Lunarian, and future Hokage. The world had tried to erase his people once. He wouldn't let it happen again. As evening settled over the village, white fire flickered faintly beneath the seal, not wild or desperate but patient as moonlight, steady as hope itself. Tomorrow, his real training would begin. Dawn came too early and not soon enough. Naruto had barely slept, his dreams filled with soaring figures and white flames that danced just beyond his reach. The suppression seal had grown warm against his chest during the night, responding to the turbulence of his emotions. Now, as he jogged through the empty streets toward Training Ground 44, every shadow seemed to hide watching eyes. The forest of death loomed before him like a primordial cathedral, its canopy so thick that morning light barely penetrated to the forest floor. Ancient trees groaned in the wind, their massive trunks scarred by decades of high-level jutsu testing. If there was anywhere in Konoha where he could safely lose control, this was it. Hiruzen waited at the entrance, but he wasn't alone. 3 figures in Anbu masks flanked him, Bear, Hawk, and one Naruto didn't recognize, whose porcelain face bore the stylized features of a crane. "Security," the Hokage explained at Naruto's questioning look. "What we attempt today may attract attention." The suppression seal itched fiercely as they walked deeper into the forest. With each step, Naruto could feel his Lunarian heritage stirring, as if the ancient power recognized that it was finally being taken off its leash. His heart hammered against his ribs. They emerged into a circular clearing where generations of shinobi had practiced their most dangerous techniques. Scorch marks and crater-deep gouges scarred the earth. At the clearing's center, someone had drawn an intricate seal array in white chalk, spiraling patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Containment seals," Hiruzen said, noting Naruto's stare. "They won't stop your flames, but they'll prevent them from spreading beyond this area." Naruto nodded, throat suddenly dry. "So, how do we start?" "First, we remove the suppression." The Hokage moved behind him, fingers glowing with chakra. "I want you to focus on something that makes you feel protected and loved. Your happiest memory." Happiest memory. Naruto closed his eyes, sorting through a life that had held precious few bright moments. Most of his joy came from small things. Uruka-sensei buying him ramen after a particularly brutal day. The third Hokage's visits when nightmares kept him awake. The rare occasions when other children forgot to be afraid of him long enough to include him in their games. But the memory that surfaced was more recent. 3 days ago, lying in the hospital bed while Hiruzen explained his heritage. The moment when he'd realized he wasn't alone, that somewhere in his blood flowed the legacy of an entire people. "Ready?" Hiruzen asked. Naruto nodded. The seal peeled away from his skin with a sound like tearing silk. Power rushed through him like a dam bursting. White fire erupted from every pore, not the gentle wisps from the academy incident, but a roaring torrent that turned the air itself incandescent. The containment seals flared, struggling to hold back the expanding sphere of flame. Naruto gasped, overwhelmed by the raw sensation, not burning but alive, as if every cell in his body had awakened for the first time. And then came the wings. They unfurled from his shoulder blades in a cascade of bone, membrane, and crackling energy, not physical constructs but manifestations of pure Lunarian power. Each wingbeat sent gusts of superheated air rippling through the clearing. The Anbu took defensive positions, hands on weapons they knew would be useless against this display. Incredible, Hiruzen breathed. The bloodline is stronger than I dared hope. But Naruto wasn't listening. The world had transformed around him, every detail sharp as crystal. He could feel the life force of every creature in the forest, see the flow of chakra through the earth itself, taste the weight of the sky pressing down from above. This was what it meant to be Lunarian, to exist in harmony with forces beyond mortal comprehension. Fly. The urge came from some ancestral memory, instinctive as breathing. His wings beat once, twice, and suddenly his feet left the ground. The sensation defied description, not the clumsy propulsion of chakra-assisted jumps but a rejection of gravity itself. He rose 20 feet, 50, 100, until the Anbu below looked like toys and the forest canopy spread beneath him like a green ocean. Konoha stretched in all directions, peaceful in the morning light. From this height he could see the Hokage monument, the academy where his classmates were probably just arriving, the apartment building where he'd spent so many lonely nights. All of it suddenly felt precious and fragile, worth protecting at any cost. A sharp whistle from below brought him back to earth. Literally. He'd been so caught up in the euphoria of flight that he'd lost focus, and gravity reasserted itself with painful enthusiasm. Only a desperate wingbeat at the last second saved him from becoming a crater. Concentration, Naruto, Hiruzen called as the flames gradually dimmed. Power without control is chaos. The wings folded back into nothingness, leaving only fading afterimages of light. Naruto stood in the center of the clearing, steaming slightly, grinning like a maniac. Did you see that? I actually flew, like really flew, not just jumped high. I saw. The Hokage's expression mixed pride with concern. I also saw you lose focus the moment you glimpsed the village. Your emotions are still driving the power instead of directing it. So, emotions aren't bad, no, but they're unreliable. Hiruzen gestured to the scorch marks Naruto's landing had left in the earth. What happens when you're angry instead of joyful, when fear takes hold instead of wonder? Your flames respond to what you feel, but they magnify it tenfold. The point hit home. Naruto remembered the white-hot rage that had triggered his first manifestation, how the bully's terror had only fed the fire's intensity. If he'd been truly furious instead of just annoyed. The Lunarians developed meditation techniques to achieve emotional balance, Hiruzen continued. We'll start there, but first, he glanced toward the forest edge where a familiar chakra signature was approaching fast. It seems your teammates have found us. Naruto's enhanced senses caught them before they emerged from the trees. Sasuke's cold determination, Sakura's worried confusion, and underlying it all, Kakashi's carefully controlled alarm. Team 7 burst into the clearing just as the last wisps of white flame faded from Naruto's skin. What the hell was that? Sasuke demanded, sharing and spinning. We felt your chakra from 3 miles away. It wasn't chakra, Sakura whispered, staring at the melted sand where Naruto had landed. At least not any kind I've ever seen. Kakashi's single visible eye flicked between Naruto and the Hokage, reading the situation with a veteran's instincts. Hokage-sama. Perhaps we should discuss this privately? No, Naruto's voice cut through the tension like a blade. They're my teammates, they deserve to know. The silence stretched taut as a bowstring. Hiruzen looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Naruto's expression stopped him. This was the boy's choice to make. Know what? Sasuke's voice had gone deadly quiet, the tone he used when his pride was threatened. Naruto met his best friend's gaze steadily. That I'm not just a Jinchuriki, I'm also the last Lunarian. He explained everything, the ancient race of sky warriors, the genocide that had scattered them across the world, his own miraculous survival and the power that came with it. As he spoke, Sasuke's expression grew progressively darker. So while I've been struggling to master a few fire jutsu, Sasuke said when Naruto finished, you've been sitting on godlike abilities this whole time. I didn't know. Bullshit. The Sharingan flared brighter. You're telling me those flames just happened to manifest 3 days ago, that you never felt anything before then? Sasuke, Sakura started, but he cut her off with a sharp gesture. Do you have any idea what I've been through to get stronger? The training, the pain, His voice cracked. And you've had divine power in your blood this whole time. The hurt in his friend's voice hit Naruto harder than any physical blow. It's not like that, this power. It's not a gift, it's a burden. Everyone who finds out will either fear me or try to use me. At least you have a choice, Sasuke snarled. At least your power comes from something noble instead of, he stopped himself, but they all knew what he'd been about to say. Instead of a thirst for revenge. The confrontation might have escalated if Sakura hadn't stepped between them. Stop it, both of you! Her voice shook with uncharacteristic authority. Sasuke, you're being an idiot, and Naruto. She turned to face him and he was startled to see tears in her eyes. Why didn't you trust us enough to tell us? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Naruto opened his mouth to defend himself, then closed it again, because the truth was he had been afraid not of their fear but of their rejection. Of becoming even more isolated than he already was. I was scared, he admitted quietly. I thought you might look at me the way everyone else does, like I'm a monster. Sakura's expression softened. You idiot. You're the same Naruto who cried when I got hurt in Wave Country. The same Naruto who never gives up on anyone, even when they've given up on themselves. She gestured to his still steaming form. Wings and fire don't change that. Sasuke remained silent, but some of the anger had leaked out of his posture. Kakashi cleared his throat diplomatically. Perhaps we should focus on practical matters, their sensei suggested. If Naruto is developing new abilities, Team 7's training will need to adapt accordingly. Agreed, Hiruzen said, but that will require absolute secrecy. If word spreads that a Lunarian lives, bounty hunters, Kakashi finished grimly. I've heard the stories. Some of those bounties are still active, even decades after the last confirmed sighting. The weight of that revelation settled over the clearing like a shroud. Naruto felt the familiar isolation creeping back, the sense that his very existence was a danger to everyone around him. Then Sasuke spoke, his voice carefully neutral. What's the training schedule? Everyone turned to stare at him. Sasuke, Sakura ventured, if the Deadlast is developing divine powers, then I need to train twice as hard to keep up. A smile ghosted across his lips, not entirely friendly but not hostile either. Besides, someone needs to make sure his inflated ego doesn't get him killed. Relief flooded through Naruto so powerfully that sparks of white flame danced along his fingertips. Team, don't get sentimental, Dobi. This changes nothing between us. But Sasuke's Sharingan had deactivated and his stance had relaxed. Just, next time you're hiding world-shaking secrets, maybe give us a heads up. Deal, Naruto grinned. But only if you promise not to brood too much about it. I don't brood. You absolutely brood. Shut up. Watching his teammates bicker, Kakashi felt some of his tension ease. Team 7 had weathered their first major crisis of trust. They would survive this revelation as they had survived everything else together. But as the morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows through the forest of death, none of them noticed the figure watching from the tree line. Behind a mask of polished wood, ancient eyes studied Naruto with calculating interest. The last Lunarian had awakened his heritage. Soon, the hunt would begin again. The mission to Wave Country should have been routine: escort a bridge builder, deal with a few bandits, collect payment, and return home. Team 7 had been looking forward to their first C-rank assignment, a chance to prove themselves beyond the confines of Konoha's training grounds. None of them had expected to face a demon of the bloody mist. Naruto crouched behind a massive tree trunk, listening to the clash of steel on steel as Kakashi battled Zabuza Mamachi in the clearing ahead. The demon of the hidden mist moved like liquid death, his massive executioner's blade carving arcs through the morning fog. Even with the Sharingan, Kakashi was being pushed to his limits. The suppression seal on Naruto's chest had been modified after the incident in Training Ground 44. No longer a complete lock, but a gradual release valve that allowed him to access his Lunarian powers in small doses. The change had come at Hiruzen's insistence. If Naruto was going to face real combat situations, he needed to be able to defend himself without risking a complete power surge. Now, watching his sensei struggle against one of the most feared shinobi in the world, Naruto felt that familiar heat building in his chest. White sparks danced along his fingertips, barely visible in the pre-dawn gloom. A scream from the bridge snapped his attention away from the battle. Haku had Sasuke trapped in his ice mirror prison, needles of frozen death flying from every angle. Blood stained Sasuke's torn clothes and his movements were growing sluggish. "Sakura, protect Tazuna," Naruto shouted, already moving. "I'm going in." Naruto, wait, but he was already running, chakra and something else, something older and fiercer flooding through his system. The ice mirrors reflected his approach in a dozen fractured images, each one showing the determination blazing in his eyes. Haku's voice drifted from within the prison of mirrors, cold as winter wind. "You cannot save him. This technique is absolute." "Yeah," Naruto grinned, feeling white fire begin to seep through his skin. "Well, I've got something that's pretty absolute too." He dove into the mirror formation without hesitation. The world exploded into crystal and light. Ice needles flew from every direction, each one aimed with lethal precision. Naruto twisted desperately, taking shallow cuts along his arms and legs, but there were too many angles, too many mirrors. One needle caught him in the shoulder, another grazed his neck, and then his rage ignited. White flames erupted from his body in a torrent of divine fury, not the controlled wisps he'd been practicing with, but the full manifestation of Lunarian wrath. The temperature in the mirror prison spiked beyond anything natural. Steam rose in billowing clouds as ancient fire met modern ice. Haku's mirrors began to crack. "Impossible," the masked ninja breathed, his voice losing its ethereal calm for the first time. "What manner of bloodline is this?" Naruto didn't answer. He was beyond words, lost in the primal satisfaction of his flames devouring Haku's technique. Each mirror that shattered felt like a victory not just for him, but for every Lunarian who had ever fallen to those who thought divine power could be caged. Through the steam and melting ice, he saw Sasuke's eyes, wide with shock and something that might have been awe. The Uchiha was pressed against the far wall of the formation, protected from the worst of the heat by distance but still sweating from the intensity. "Naruto," Sasuke called out, voice hoarse. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." But Haku wasn't finished. Even as his mirrors cracked and steamed, he launched himself at Naruto with desperate speed, senbon needles gleaming in each hand. The attack was flawlessly executed, targeting pressure points that would paralyze without killing. Naruto's flames flared brighter, and suddenly he could see the attack coming as if time had slowed. Each needle's trajectory blazed in his enhanced vision like tracer fire. His body moved without conscious thought, dodging with fluid grace that would have impressed even the most seasoned taijutsu masters. "You move like them," Haku whispered, wonder creeping into his voice. "Like the old stories of the Sky People." "Sky People?" Naruto's flames dimmed slightly as curiosity overcame rage. "Legends my mother told me before." Haku's voice grew distant. "Warriors with skin like bronze and flames like falling stars, who could fly between the clouds and whose fire burned pure enough to melt the very air." The last mirror shattered, sending fragments of superheated ice cascading around them. In the sudden silence, Naruto and Haku faced each other across the steaming clearing. The masked ninja's shoulders sagged with exhaustion and something deeper, a bone-deep weariness that came from years of serving as a tool for others. "You're like me, aren't you?" Naruto said quietly, the white flames settling into a gentle aura around his form. "The last one left." Haku's mask tilted slightly. "What do you mean, your bloodline, the ice techniques? I bet people called you a monster too, didn't they?" A sharp intake of breath was Haku's only response, but it was enough. Naruto had struck the truth. "I know what it's like," Naruto continued, stepping closer despite Sasuke's warning shout. "To be alone, to be different, to have people look at you like you're not even human. You know nothing, I know everything." The flames pulsed brighter. "I know what it's like to lie awake at night wondering if you'll ever find somewhere you belong. I know what it's like to have power that scares people, even when all you want to do is protect them." Haku's hands trembled around his remaining senbon. "Then you understand why you think you must serve Zabuza," Naruto interrupted. "Because he was the first person who ever saw you as useful instead of cursed. But that's not the same as being valued, is it?" The words hit their target with surgical precision. Haku staggered as if physically struck, and for a moment his mask slipped, not the porcelain one, but the emotional armor he'd built around his heart. Zabuza-sama saved me. Zabuza uses you. Naruto's voice grew gentle, the flames around him dimming to a warm glow. There's a difference between being saved and being claimed. In the distance, the sound of Kakashi and Zabuza's battle had changed. Shouting voices, the splash of water, the distinctive crack of lightning blade meeting flesh. But neither boy moved, caught in a moment of recognition that transcended the mission parameters. "What would you have me do?" Haku asked finally. "Abandon the only purpose I have ever known. Find a new one." Naruto extended a hand, white fire dancing harmlessly around his fingers. "People like us, people who have been called monsters, we get to choose what we become. We can be the demons they expect, or we can be something better." For a heartbeat that stretched into eternity, Haku stared at the offered hand. In it, he saw everything he'd never dared to dream: acceptance, understanding, a chance to exist as more than just a weapon. Then Gato's voice cut through the moment like a rusty blade. "Zabuza, you and your little tool are finished." The shipping magnate stood at the edge of the clearing, flanked by dozens of hired thugs. His face wore the satisfied sneer of a man who believed money could solve any problem. Behind him, Naruto could see the villagers of Wave, Tazuna's friends and neighbors, armed with farm tools and burning with righteous fury. "Haku," Zabuza's voice drifted from where he lay bleeding by the water's edge. "Come. We're leaving." The spell broke. Haku's mask snapped back into place, emotional and physical, and his stance shifted back to combat readiness. "I'm sorry," he whispered to Naruto, "but my path was chosen long ago." "No, it wasn't," Naruto said desperately. "You still have a choice." But Haku was already moving, racing toward his fallen master with the single-minded devotion of a faithful dog. Naruto's flames flared as he prepared to give chase, but Sasuke's hand on his shoulder stopped him. "Let him go," the Uchiha said quietly. "Some people have to save themselves." They watched as Haku gathered Zabuza's broken form and vanished into the mist, leaving only drops of blood and the memory of what might have been. The hired thugs scattered when faced with the combined wrath of Team 7 and the vengeful villagers. Gato himself met an end that was swift if not particularly noble. Later, as they stood on the newly completed Great Naruto Bridge, Tazuna had insisted on the name despite Naruto's protests. Kakashi pulled his student aside. "That technique you used in the mirrors," their sensei said carefully. "The white flames, that wasn't just an advanced fire jutsu, was it?" Naruto met his gaze steadily. "No. It wasn't. Care to explain?" So Naruto did, watching Kakashi's single eye widen as the truth unfolded. When he finished, his sensei was quiet for a long moment, staring out over the water where Haku and Zabuza had disappeared. "The Lunarians," Kakashi said finally, "I thought they were myths. So did I until a few weeks ago. This explains a great deal." Kakashi's voice carried a note of understanding. "Your unusual chakra capacity, your resilience, even your stubborn refusal to give up classic Lunarian traits according to the old stories. You've heard of them. My father collected legends about lost bloodlines. He would have found this fascinating." Kakashi turned to face him fully. "Naruto, you realize what this means if word gets out." "I know," Naruto's fists clenched. "Bounty hunters, government agents, people who want to capture or kill the last of my kind. The Hokage already explained the risks. Then why reveal yourself during the fight? You could have let Sasuke handle it." The question hung in the air like a challenge. Naruto thought of Haku, alone in his mask of ice and duty, and of all the other people in the world who carried their pain in silence. "Because hiding who you are doesn't protect anyone," he said finally. "It just means you suffer alone." Kakashi studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly, spoken like a true Lunarian. "From what I remember of the stories, they were never ones to hide their light under a bushel." As the sun set over Wave Country, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Naruto felt something settle in his chest, not the weight of burden but the certainty of purpose. His flames weren't a curse to be hidden or a weapon to be feared. They were a beacon, calling to others who walked in darkness. Somewhere out there, Haku was still serving a master who saw him only as a tool. But maybe, just maybe, their brief encounter had planted a seed. Maybe one day, the ice wielder would remember that he had a choice. And when that day came, Naruto's flames would be waiting to light his way home. The white fire flickered softly around his fingers as Team 7 prepared for their journey back to Konoha, carrying with them the first real victory in what would become a legend. Behind them, the great Naruto Bridge stood as a testament to the power of never giving up, and to the boy who had learned that being the last of his kind didn't mean he had to be alone. 2 months after the mission to Wave Country, Naruto found himself in a place that felt like the edge of the world. A remote training ground deep in Fire Country's wilderness, where ancient trees grew so tall they seemed to pierce the sky itself. The air here tasted different, charged with wild chakra and the memory of old battles. Jiraiya of the Sannin sat perched on a boulder, scribbling notes in a leather-bound journal while keeping one eye on his new student. The legendary shinobi had arrived in Konoha just as reports of Naruto's unusual techniques began circulating among the village's intelligence networks. His meeting with Hiruzen had been brief and intense, conducted in the privacy of the Hokage's office with silencing seals active. Now, watching Naruto attempt his 15th failed Rasengan of the morning, Jiraiya wondered if he'd bitten off more than he could chew. "Focus, brat," he called out as another ball of swirling chakra collapsed in Naruto's palm. The Rasengan isn't just about spinning chakra, it's about maintaining perfect control while channeling pure destruction. It's a contradiction that requires absolute mastery to resolve. Naruto wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving streaks in the dust that clung to his skin. The modified suppression seal allowed him to access his Lunarian powers in controlled bursts, but the constant low-level heat made traditional training exhausting. Every movement felt like he was working against a furnace burning in his chest. "Easy for you to say," he panted. "You don't have divine fire trying to cook you from the inside out every time you concentrate." "No, I have other problems." Jiraiya's expression grew serious. "Like wondering if I'm training the next great protector or the next great catastrophe." The words stung, but Naruto had heard variations of them his entire life. "I'm not going to lose control." Famous last words. Jiraiya closed his journal and hopped down from the boulder. "Show me what happens when you try to combine your flames with the Rasengan." "But you said," "I said a lot of things. Now I want to see what happens when theory meets reality." The Sannin's eyes glittered with dangerous curiosity. "Don't worry about control, just let it happen." Naruto hesitated. Every lesson from Hiruzen, every warning about the price of Lunarian power screamed against the idea. But something in Jiraiya's tone suggested this wasn't really a suggestion. He closed his eyes and reached for both sources of power simultaneously. The familiar spiral of chakra that formed the Rasengan's core and the ancient fire that sang in his bloodline. For a moment, the two forces remained separate, distinct energies that refused to merge. Then, with a sound like breaking glass, they touched. White fire exploded through the swirling chakra, not destroying the technique but transforming it. The Rasengan's familiar blue glow shifted to blazing ivory, and the temperature in the clearing spiked so high that leaves began curling on nearby branches. The sphere of energy in Naruto's palm wasn't just spinning anymore, it was burning, consuming the very air around it. "Incredible," Jiraiya breathed. "It's not just adding fire to the technique, it's fundamentally changing what the Rasengan is." Naruto stared at the transformed jutsu in wonder and terror. He could feel its hunger, the way it wanted to consume everything it touched. This wasn't just a more powerful Rasengan, it was something entirely new. "What do I do with it?" he asked, struggling to maintain control as the white flames grew brighter. "Find a target that can handle it." Jiraiya pointed toward a massive boulder at the far end of the clearing, a chunk of granite the size of a small building. "Let's see what your ignition Rasengan can do." The name felt right the moment Jiraiya spoke it. Naruto sprinted toward the boulder, the white fire in his palm leaving a trail of superheated air. At the last second, he leaped, driving the technique into the stone with all his strength. The explosion lit up the forest like a second sun. When the smoke cleared, the boulder was gone, not shattered or carved apart, but completely vaporized. In its place was a perfect sphere of glass, formed from sand that had been flash melted by temperatures that shouldn't have been possible outside of a volcano's heart. Naruto stood at the edge of the glass crater, steam rising from his clothes, grinning like a madman. "Did you see that? It didn't just destroy the rock, it unmade it." "I saw," Jiraiya's voice was carefully neutral. "I also saw you nearly collapse from the chakra drain. How much of your life force did that technique cost?" The question sobered Naruto instantly. He could feel the answer in his bones. The technique had taken weeks off his life, maybe months. Not enough to cripple him, but enough to serve as a stark reminder that Lunarian power always demanded payment. "Too much for regular use," he admitted. "Exactly. Which means you need to learn when to use your heritage and when to rely on regular shinobi techniques." Jiraiya walked over to examine the glass crater. "Tell me, what do you know about your people's history?" "The real history, not just the legends Hiruzen showed you," Naruto shrugged. "They were powerful, they were hunted, most of them died." "Most, but not all." Jiraiya's expression grew distant. "I've traveled to places where the old stories still echo. Remote islands, hidden valleys, the kinds of places where secrets go to die. And in those places, I've heard whispers of Lunarians who learn to hide in plain sight." "You mean there might be others?" "I mean there might be descendants. Bloodlines diluted over generations, power dormant until the right circumstances awaken it." Jiraiya met his eyes. "But I also heard darker stories, organizations that specialize in hunting down the last traces of extinct bloodlines. Government agencies that would do anything to weaponize divine power." The implications hit Naruto like a physical blow. "You're saying people are coming for me. I'm saying people have already come for others like you. And most of those stories don't end well." Jiraiya's voice hardened. "Which is why you need to get stronger, faster than any student I've ever trained. Because when they come, and they will come, being the last Lunarian won't be enough. You'll need to be the strongest." They spent the rest of the morning working on chakra control exercises designed to help Naruto manage the interaction between his two power sources. By noon, he could form a basic Rasengan infused with just enough Lunarian fire to make it burn without draining his life force significantly. During their lunch break, Jiraiya pulled out a scroll covered in what looked like scientific diagrams. "Recognize any of this?" Naruto studied the drawings, anatomical sketches showing the locations of chakra points, but overlaid with patterns of flowing energy he'd never seen before. "What is it?" "Research notes from a contact of mine, someone who's made it his life's work to study extinct bloodlines." Jiraiya's finger traced one of the energy patterns. "According to his theories, Lunarian power doesn't just flow through the chakra network. It uses a completely separate system, one that connects to cosmic forces beyond our planet." "Cosmic forces?" "The moon, the stars, solar radiation, sources of energy that most shinobi can't even perceive, let alone access." Jiraiya rolled up the scroll. "Which explains why your flames seem to defy normal thermodynamics. They're not just burning chakra, they're burning starlight itself." The concept made Naruto's head spin. He'd known his heritage was special, but this suggested it was something far beyond what he'd imagined. "So what does that mean for my training?" "It means we're going to try something that's either brilliant or incredibly stupid." Jiraiya grinned with the manic enthusiasm of a man about to poke a sleeping dragon. "We're going to train at night under the full moon and see if lunar energy affects your abilities." The idea both thrilled and terrified Naruto. Every instinct told him this was dangerous, that messing with forces he didn't understand could lead to disaster. But the same instincts that made him want to help Haku, that drove him to protect his teammates, urged him forward. As the sun began to set behind the ancient trees, casting long shadows across their training ground, Naruto felt the first stirrings of something new in his bloodline. The approaching darkness didn't feel ominous, it felt like coming home. Tonight, he would learn what it truly meant to be a child of the moon, but first he had to survive whatever Jiraiya had planned. And judging by the gleam in the Sannin's eyes, that was going to be the hardest part of all. "One more thing, brat," Jiraiya said as they prepared for the evening's exercises. "If this goes wrong, if you lose control or the power starts consuming you, I want you to remember something." "What?" "You're not just the last Lunarian, you're Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha. And no matter how hot your flames burn, that's the fire that matters most." White sparks danced around Naruto's fingers as the moon began to rise, and somewhere in the distance, The night wind carried whispers of ancient power stirring to life. The real training was about to begin. The attack came at dawn, when the morning mist still clung to Konoha's rooftops like ghostly fingers. Naruto jolted awake in his apartment to the sound of his window exploding inward. Glass showered across his floor as three figures in dark tactical gear dropped through the opening with inhuman grace. Their faces were hidden behind masks of polished metal, but their intent was clear. The strange devices in their hands hummed with energy that made his Lunarian heritage recoil in instinctive fear. "Target acquired," the lead figure spoke into a throat mic. "Beginning extraction." Naruto rolled off his futon as the first energy blast scorched the air where his head had been. White flames erupted around him reflexively, not the controlled burn he'd been practicing with Jiraiya, but pure survival instinct made manifest. The suppression seal on his chest flared and cracked under the sudden surge of power. "Suppression field isn't holding," one of the attackers reported. "Subject's bloodline is more active than intelligence suggested." Bloodline, they knew what he was. The realization hit him like ice water even as his flames roared higher. These weren't random kidnappers or even typical bounty hunters. These were specialists, equipped specifically to deal with Lunarian abilities. The energy weapons in their hands weren't designed to kill, they were designed to capture. "Anbu," Naruto shouted, hoping someone would hear him over the sound of his apartment being systematically destroyed. "Help! Acoustic dampeners are active," the lead figure said calmly, advancing through Naruto's flames like they were nothing more than warm air. "No one can hear you, godling." The term carried centuries of hatred, the same contempt that had driven his people to near extinction. Naruto's flames shifted from white to something deeper, a color that had no name, burning with the fury of an entire extinct race. The temperature in the room spiked beyond anything the apartment structure could handle. Paint blistered off the walls, wooden furniture burst into normal flame, and the metal fixtures began to glow cherry red. But still, the hunters advanced, their equipment protecting them from the inferno, until Naruto's wings manifested. They erupted from his shoulder blades in a cascade of bone and fire, each feather a blade of crystallized starlight. The hunter's confident advance faltered as divine power filled the small space, pressing against them like a physical weight. "Impossible," one of them breathed. "Full manifestation shouldn't be possible at his age." Naruto's wings swept across the room, and suddenly it wasn't impossible anymore. The hunter's words cut off in a scream as divine fire carved through his armor like paper. The other two opened fire with their energy weapons, but Naruto was already moving, his enhanced speed carrying him through the broken window and into the morning sky. Behind him, his apartment building groaned as structural supports weakened by the heat began to fail. Civilians in the surrounding buildings were starting to notice the smoke, the unusual glow, the sounds of combat that somehow couldn't quite be heard. "I have to lead them away," Naruto realized, banking hard toward the village outskirts. "Whatever they want with me, I can't let innocent people get caught in the crossfire." But as he soared over Konoha's rooftops, more attackers emerged from concealment. They rose from alleys and building tops like a coordinated swarm, each one equipped with the same energy weapons and suppression technology. This wasn't a capture attempt, it was a military operation. "Subject is airborne," voices crackled through radio channels. "All units converge on Vector 77. Naruto counted at least a dozen figures giving chase, moving with the fluid coordination of a well-trained unit. Energy blasts lanced through the air around him, each one designed to disrupt his flight without causing fatal damage. They wanted him alive. Why? The question burned in his mind as he dodged another volley. What do they want with the last Lunarian? The answer came from an unexpected source. As Naruto banked around the Hokage monument, a figure dropped from the carved stone face of the first Hokage, not one of his pursuers, but someone else entirely. An old man in simple traveling clothes, his hair white as moonlight and his skin bearing the distinctive bronze tone of Lunarian heritage. "This way, young flame," the stranger called, his voice carrying impossible authority. "Quickly, before they can triangulate our position." Every instinct screamed at Naruto not to trust an unknown figure who had appeared in the middle of a crisis. But those same instincts recognized something in the old man's bearing, in the way heat shimmers danced around his form despite the cool morning air. Another Lunarian. Naruto followed without hesitation, diving toward a hidden entrance the stranger revealed in the monument's base. Behind them, their pursuers converged on empty air, their target vanished as completely as smoke. The passage led deep into the mountain, past chambers that predated Konoha's founding. Emergency lighting flickered to life as they passed, revealing walls covered in symbols that made Naruto's heritage sing with recognition. This place had been touched by his people before. "Who are you?" he asked as they finally stopped in a circular chamber dominated by a massive seal array. "I am Kaido," the old man replied, his fingers dancing through hand signs that activated the chamber's defenses. "And I am what you will become if you survive the next few hours, the last guardian of a dying flame. You're Lunarian." It wasn't a question. Will be until the final ember gutters out. Kaido's eyes were ancient, holding depths of sorrow that made Naruto's own loneliness seem small by comparison. "I have been hiding in this world for 70 years, watching for signs that our bloodline might yet endure, when reports of white flames began circulating. You came to find me. I came to warn you." Kaido's expression grew grim. "The organization hunting you calls itself the Divine Eradication Protocol. They are the inheritors of the original purge, funded by governments that still fear the return of gods to the world." The name sent chills down Naruto's spine. "How many others have they?" "All of them." Kaido's voice was stone. "Every Lunarian who manifested their heritage in the last century, every child who showed even a trace of our bloodline. They have made it their mission to ensure that the Age of Gods never returns." Rage built in Naruto's chest, white-hot and terrible. "Then why are we hiding? Why aren't we fighting back?" "Because fighting is what they expect. What they're prepared for." Kaido gestured to the seal array around them. "This chamber is warded against their detection methods. Here, we can speak freely of things that would bring them down upon us like an avalanche." "What things?" Kaido was quiet for a long moment, studying Naruto with eyes that seemed to see through flesh and bone to the divine fire beneath. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of prophecy. "You are not the last, boy, you are the first." "I don't understand." "Our people were scattered, not destroyed. Hidden bloodlines sleep in distant corners of the world, waiting for the right catalyst to awaken them." Kaido's flames began to glow brighter, responding to the intensity of his emotions. "The protocol knows this. They know that if even one fully awakened Lunarian survives to adulthood, others will begin to manifest across the globe." The implications hit Naruto like a physical blow. "I'm not just a target. I'm patient zero for their worst nightmare." "Exactly, which is why they cannot allow you to live and why I cannot allow you to die." Kaido moved to a wall covered in ancient weapons, selecting a blade that sang with contained starfire. "They will return with greater numbers, better equipment, more desperate tactics. This sanctuary will not hold them forever. So what do? We ensure that you grow strong enough to kindle the flames they thought they had extinguished forever." Kaido turned back to face him, and for the first time since their meeting, he smiled. "Tell me, young flame, are you ready to learn what it truly means to be Lunarian?" Above them, the sounds of searching grew closer. Energy weapons discharged against stone, voices called out coordinates, and somewhere in the distance, alarms began to wail as Konoha's own forces mobilized to investigate the disturbance. Naruto felt his heritage respond to the challenge, white flames dancing around his clenched fists. For the first time in his life, he wasn't alone in carrying the weight of divine blood. For the first time, he had a teacher who understood not just his power, but his burden. "I'm ready," he said, and meant it. Kaido's smile widened, revealing teeth that gleamed like polished ivory. "Then let us begin your true education, and when we are finished," he hefted the starfire blade, its edge cutting light itself. "Let us show these protocol hunters what happens when they threaten the heirs of heaven." The chamber filled with white fire as two Lunarians prepared for war, and somewhere in the depths of Konoha, ancient powers stirred from their long slumber. The hunt had begun, but the prey had fangs of their own. And that's Naruto's incredible journey from the last Lunarian to choosing humanity over godhood. From awakening divine flames to that legendary final sacrifice, what an epic ride. What was your favorite moment? The insane Sasuke battle, Kaido's sacrifice, that mind-blowing finale? Drop your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe for more epic crossover breakdowns and let me know what broken character combinations you want next. Alright guys, peace out.